I'm so curious to hear how, this knowledge and this understanding shapes, your perception in terms of the notion of human existence, and what are your, ideas and personal beliefs in terms of whether there is a purpose behind who we are, or the general big question that we're all asking ourselves.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
First of all, I have to agree with you, and I probably would not be a physicist if it were not for Brian Greene's book, The Elegant Universe.
Yes.
So that was highly influential on me as well. So solidarity for all those people. Yeah, Brian's a great guy, and so in terms of the question, though, it's like I don't know. Anytime we start, because again, I have this sort of like second career as a second life as a public facing scientist, where I do these kind of performative monologues on stage, science storytelling, but then I also do a lot of I love to do these I love Q&As. I love Ask Me Anything format. That's like my favorite thing in the world. I had a TikTok account for 6 months or something. Built up a rather large number of followers in a short amount of time. And one of the things that I've stopped using the account for various reasons, but one of the things that I loved about that format was that I could just do these kind of live streams, right? I could just, anywhere I was in the world, because I travel a lot for speaking engagements, anywhere I was with something cool behind me, I could start doing a live, and tens of thousands of people would join asking questions about science. And we'd spend, an hour just talking. And I really liked the Ask Me Anything format. But I do get asked, to talk about these kinds of things with various people, the notion of human, what's the point of life? What's the point of existence? What's is there a meaning to everything around us? This one's interesting to me because for a long time, I would try to say it's like you don't need meaning. It's like the meaning is what you create yourself. It's what we as humans create ourselves. But I've actually become a little bit more, I think, radical in my view in that perspective. In that direction. Recently, is that I find it like, and I'm not saying you did this. It's just we all did this. It's because our brains we evolved this way. I find it horribly vain. I find it horribly hubristic that humans would think that there should be some concept of meaning that we should apply to our existence, to the universe. That's crazy if you think about it from one perspective. From a scientific perspective, it's like, okay, yeah, it seems probable that there are other civilizations out in the universe, given the size of the universe. Again, the only thing we know, though, the thing that is known to us is that we have an observable universe that's about, 96 million light years in diameter or something like that, or billion, I think it is, orders of magnitude. It's, we know that exists, but we know that there must be stuff outside that. And the size of the universe is, we don't know. It could be huge, 250 to at least 250 to 500 times larger than the observable universe, but it also could be infinite in size. We don't know that. And so if that's the case, if it is infinite, then okay, yeah, probably there have to be other, statistically there have to be other civilizations. But even if it's large, it seems likely that there's other civilizations out there. There's no reason for us to think that we're somehow special in this universe. And because of that, it requires us to start thinking deeply about all of the kinds of human inventions. If you want to take it a different direction, human innovations, but human inventions, the concepts that we have invented to try to make sense of our existence in the universe. And one of those concepts is the fact that we need to have explanations for why, the concept that we have to have meaning, you have to impose meaning or something upon something, which doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, from a cosmic scale, this makes no sense. Within human civilizations, yes, it does make sense, right? I mean, I like to think that my grandmother loved me because, she cared about me as a human being because, we're related, but also just because she was a kind human being and she cared about, the goodwill of all humanity. That's good. There's a good meaning behind that. I like to think that, kindness is a good thing. And I espouse these views myself, that all humans are connected, all humans are equal, all humans are, should be equal. And we need to go out of our way to equitably distribute our resources to people that are less fortunate than ours, simply because they're humans and they deserve the dignity to live, right? These are within human societies. This is completely essential. But from a cosmic scale, like, why would we assume that the universe would care about our concepts of meaning? That's insane. Like, that's crazy. That's like psychotic to think that the universe is literally just this thing that exists that we're a part of. We invented this concept of meaning. We invented this concept of, I need to have some kind of emotional, I need to have some kind of emotional explanation for why something exists or why something happens or does not happen. Otherwise, I'm not satisfied. But the universe doesn't care about that at all. Like, I like to say, from one perspective, one of the things I love to say is that the universe is under no obligation to make its laws seem elegant to humans. And a corollary of that is that the universe is under no obligation to create the conditions so that humans can impose their psychological inventions upon parts of the universe that are not applicable. Those are not applicable to it all. Like that to me is just insane. And so, again, for some people that might seem like I'm evading the question, but I really do think that it's something that it doesn't make any sense to impose this kind of understanding upon things that, that the universe doesn't care about. Right. And this is another version of. This is a more, like I said, a more kind of radical version of of things that happen within science all the time. This is something that we've all talked about, we've all experienced in various ways. This notion that quantum mechanics is weird, right? This is what I use the words myself. Because I talk to the public a lot. I have to use shortcuts to kind of start the conversation. And it's true, from one perspective, quantum mechanics is weird because there are a lot of phenomena that happen down at the smallest possible scales in the universe that are counterintuitive to you and I, right? And that's just true because, for example, again, to be clear, particle physics is all about quantum mechanics, right? Because when you go down to the smallest possible thing, again, me as a child looking at the piece of bread and then get down to the crumb and you get to a molecule and you get to an atom and you get to the particles inside of an atom and an electron. An electron, I said, is zero volume. So your body is swarming with electrons right now. I said an electron has zero volume, but it can still carry quantities like charge and spin and energy and momentum. That's a bit weird, right? Part of this has to do with quantum mechanics, is that you have, from one perspective, you can model an electron as like a little chunk of something moving through space, like a little pebble, right, moving through space. And from some phenomena that I might want to describe, I can model it that way with the mathematics, and it works well. Other phenomena, that doesn't work at all, and I have to model it more as like a little wave packet moving through space, like a waving packet of probability. This is the sort of thing where it starts to reach the edge of our human intuitive understanding. And so this is why people say things like, quantum mechanics has weird stuff in it, and in quantum mechanics, again, we collide particles here at the Large Hadron Collider. When I collide two particles at nearly the speed of light, those particles can in fact cease to exist, and a new particle is created in their place, which lives for a tiny fraction of a second before this then disintegrating and turning into other particles. So when I say we collide protons at the Large Hadron Collider, the image you should have in your head is not that we're smacking the two protons together head on to see what's inside that's not what we're doing. What we're trying to do is get some of the individual particles, like the quarks and the gluons, close enough so that those things interact and overlap. And so once you understand that particles can be both little chunks of something, but also little wave packets, it starts to make more sense how this kind of like particles cease to exist and a new thing is created in their place can happen. I mean, it's not, because particle collisions are not like, but the key point here is that that's not intuitive to us as humans at all. It's counterintuitive, right? Because, particle collisions are not like car collisions, because in car collisions, like, for example, in our everyday world, it's like if two cars collide in the middle of the intersection, we're like, oh no, is everybody okay? Is Mary okay? And maybe this tire goes off to the side and there's, windshield is broken and some glass, but the pieces are all there, right? And it's like Mary okay? Is John okay? Okay. Everybody's okay. But before and after, you still have the two cars, right? But that's not the way it works at the particle level. So imagine a car collision where the two cars vanish upon impact and a bicycle appears in their place. And then the bicycle explodes into two skateboards that hit our detector. Please don't hit our detector with a skateboard. That's quite expensive. But This would never happen in the macroscopic world, in our world, but this kind of thing happens regularly at the quantum world, because again, you have to think of these more as like little wave packets, and you have two little wave packets that come together. They can actually overlap and constructively interfere. Again, this is a very kind of simplistic way of a kind of analogy to use, but it's a way to understand how this thing can actually happen. And again, the way those come together, we can't choose that. It's the universe already has these rules in place for whether or not we're going to create a new particle. Again, we can't choose it. We can only do it a huge number of times and see how often the universe likes to do this. So again, these things are completely counterintuitive to you and I. And there's a million other examples we get, as you already know, in quantum mechanics, right? Spooky action at a distance, entanglement, quantum tunneling, right? I mean, there's basically a zero probability that right now I will suddenly and spontaneously appear and be measured underneath the floor. But this kind of thing happens regularly in the quantum world. You can have a physical barrier and a particle held here, and you hold it there, and there's some probability that you'll actually measure the particle being on the other side, because this has it has a probability distribution governed by quantum mechanics as to where it could appear. So these things are weird. And again, you're going, whoa, I go, whoa, too, because, and every physicist and every human being does this, too, because, again, this kind of behavior is very counterintuitive to you and I. But again, it's insanely hubristic and vain. It's human vanity to think that the universe is under some obligation to make its laws seem elegant or intuitive to humans. Intuition is not magic either. Intuition comes from experience. It's built upon experience. A baby has no intuition about collisions, about car collisions. This only comes later. And so intuition comes from experience, and we as a species, we didn't evolve at the quantum level, nor did we evolve at the enormously cosmic scale, right? To see like quasars blowing out stuff, or to be inundated with infrared radiation, and be affected by that, right? We evolved in this extremely friendly, friendly planet, this friendly energy range with this tiny sliver of atmosphere that's just the right temperature and everything, that we're completely destroying right now. The humans have chosen to do this, and we're choosing to continue to do this. And if we don't act, anyway. So, but like this is super friendly. Most of the universe is not like this, and there's no reason for us to think that the universe, like the laws that we learned, that the way that the universe works, there's no reason. It makes no sense to think that those laws that we learn should somehow seem intuitive to humans. So as a result of that, it's like that's why I think that it just doesn't make any sense to me anymore to think about why does humanity exist? What's the meaning of it all? What's the point of everything? Well, these concepts, and I'm not being nihilistic. Okay, I'm kind of being nihilistic if you come from a philosophical perspective. Yeah, this is sort of like, I used to call it, what is it called? Benevolent nihilism or optimistic nihilism, something like that. And this is, again, this is nothing magic. It's just basically making the simple observation that, oh, wait a minute, we humans have these five senses that our species has only had for its entire evolution. We have only had this set of inputs. And then we have, over the years, learned to use these tools that we have, our intellectual tools, the scientific tools, to start to design other types of implements or instruments and things that are extensions of our five senses, to learn things about the universe that we could never learn with just our five senses. And so once we do that, we start learning things about the universe. It's like, wow, wait a minute. All that means, the basic thing is, the question that should arise there is not, wow, there's so much of the universe is impersonal. What's the meaning of life? That's not the question that should even come up. The question that should come up is, wow, it's amazing how limited humans are, how limited we are. It's incredible how limited we are, but it's also fantastically cool and amazing that we can actually design implements to look at these things. Like the fact that we can design telescopes to see the hot gas swirling outside of black holes. That's incredible. The fact that we can build a 27-kilometer circular tunnel 100 meters out of the ground and collide protons together at such a rate to coax into existence this tiny little particle that then disintegrates, and this particle is proof positive that the universe is everywhere in the universe is permeated with this kind of invisible jelly called the Higgs field that results in certain particles of yours having this property known as mass, non-zero mass, which leads to the fact that we're even here to begin with to have this conversation. That's incredible. That in and of itself is, again, imposing meaning on things for me is very much is obviously essential for human societies. And again, it depends on the perspective you want to look at things, right? If you want to look at science from a purely science and philosophical lens, that's what I'm talking about. But you want to look at science through a political lens or an economic lens as well, then we need to sort of talk about these things and the concept of meaning and where things come from. But if you're just talking about science itself, there's nothing. And again, I think that, and I do it myself. Like I said, we've all done this because this is the way that our human brain evolved. This is the way humans evolved to need to have explanations for things and like a meaning for something, right? But once you get to the point where, our species is now, we need to eventually, it makes sense for us to jettison to abandon this concept, right? It's like, oh, okay. Well, it's like, what's the meaning of it all? Oh, wait a minute. That's the wrong question. The reality is the following. I exist right now. You exist right now. We exist in a society right now, which has incredible tools, which has developed incredible tools to learn amazing things about the universe. And the only, if we are, and we definitely are still there, right, as a species, if we need to impose meaning upon things, the meaning that we have, the meaning for human life, there is no ultimate meaning. The fact is that you and I, again, when you and I ask questions about the universe, in fact, you and I are, in a way, we're the method by which the universe asks questions about itself.
Whoa.
Because we are parts of the universe. We're not separate from the universe. That's another perspective. That's another component of this whole discussion, right? Is that whenever we have this, this question, it's like, oh, well, what's the meaning of it all? It's like, it's sort of assuming that, it's like, what's the meaning of the universe? What's the purpose of life in the universe? And but built into that question, underneath it all, is this somehow separation. It's like, oh, well, yeah, it's humans versus the universe. And what does the universe do? No, that's crazy. Because like I said, there's this, for example, there's this Higgs field that permeates all of space everywhere. It's kind of like an invisible jelly, and you don't feel it, but some of your particles do. As they move through, a little bit of their energy is dragged and it's stuck into a point that we measure as mass. And mass is not the same word that you and I use colloquially, like, whoa, look at that massive building. Mass for a particle, again, an electron has zero volume, but it has mass. So it has nothing to do with bigness or size. It is this intrinsic property that's built in there based upon how much of it is dragged by this Higgs jelly, this Higgs field. But this concept of a field also is it's the underpinning of everything in particle physics. In fact, go back to what I was talking about earlier about this notion that if I have an electron moving through space, if I want to, from some perspective, I can model this accurately as a little chunk of something moving through nothing, like empty space, a little pebble moving through empty space. Okay, yeah, I can model it sometimes that way. From another perspective, though, that's not the most fundamental and accurate way to describe all of its phenomena. In fact, the most fundamental way to think of an electron, and by extension, all of the elementary particles around us, an electron moving through empty space is not what happens. Instead, what we need, the more fundamental and accurate way to think about it, is that an electron is a little vibration in a field, a quantum field that permeates all of space everywhere. So the fundamental structure of the universe are these quantum fields, and the particles are little temporary vibrations, fluctuations in this field. So imagine you're playing with your cat on a bed, right? And you pull the bed sheet tight and you put your finger underneath the sheet and you move your finger around and the cat chases this thing, right? It's like, oh, I'm chasing the thing. So if you take the sheet away and you just put your finger there, the cat's just like, leave me alone, and wouldn't bother. But once you put the field there, suddenly you have a thing. So that's what you can think of like electrons and particles as. And this is not just a heuristic. This is this thing I refer to as quantum field theory, right? The way that you learn physics as a student, you start with the kind of Newtonian style thing where I have like a rock and I throw it up. What's the equation that makes it do this thing that comes down to the earth due to gravity? And then later you learn more things that built on top of that. And eventually you get to, okay, really the basic fundamental way, the most elementary way to describe the universe is that it's permeated with quantum fields that have these vibrations in it. And the corollary of that is that literally you and I are all collections of particles that are vibrations in the exact same quantum fields.
Wow.
And if that's the sense, we're just embedded in the universe. We're not separate from the universe. So like, sitting on the rock, looking up at the stars, thinking, well, what's the purpose of everything? Which we've all done. I do this myself, or I have done this in the past. It's like, what's the purpose of life? Instead, maybe the question that we should ask when we're doing that is, how did I get so lucky to be one of the sperm and eggs that actually got together to be able to be here right now, to be able to look up at the universe and actually contemplate existence itself? How did I get that lucky?
Wow.
And the corollary of that question, of course, is, wait a minute, on a cosmic scale, the amount of time that I exist in this universe is basically nothing. It's negligible. And because of that, that time is precious. That time is like incredibly precious. Am I really going to spend my time on Earth in existence? This particular collection of this vibration of quantum fields and particles. Am I really going to spend my time like literally just trying to get a higher paycheck? Am I literally going to spend my time like getting suckered by, far right political movements to tell me that someone brown skin is coming to take my job? Am I really going to spend my time to that? Or am I going to spend my time and my resources, this precious time that I have, to make sure that others that are less fortunate than me also get a chance to ask questions about the universe just like I do? I'm very privileged to be able to say these things, to ask these things, right? So I don't know. That's the way that I think about it. Other people might think about it a different way.